The girl who took everything. I used to believe that family was something sacred, a bond you could never question, a place where you were supposed to feel safe. I was wrong. Because the girl who ruined me shared my last name. Her name was Samantha Reed. My stepsister. The girl who turned my life into a script she wrote, and forced me to play the unwanted role. It started quietly, the way most betrayals do. Small lies. Subtle glances. The kind of moments you only recognize as warning signs when it's too late. My father had remarried when I was 15, to a woman named Caroline, who arrived with her perfect daughter, Samantha. They looked like they had stepped out of a lifestyle magazine, the mother all pearls and politeness, the daughter dripping charm like it was perfume. At first, I tried to believe we could be a family. I really did. But the truth? I was just the background character in their perfectly curated lives. Samantha had everything: beauty that turned heads, grades that impressed teachers, and a smile that fooled anyone into thinking she was kind. I wasn't jealous. Not at first. Until I realized she wanted everything that was mine, the friends I made, the boy who liked me, even my father's attention. But the day she truly stole my life was the day she found my college acceptance letter. NYU, the dream I'd worked for since I was 12. I still remember the tremor in my hands when I opened that envelope, the tears that fell when I saw congratulations. I didn't know she was watching from the hallway. 2 weeks later, she told everyone she had gotten into NYU. My father believed her. Caroline smiled proudly. And when I tried to defend myself, she played the victim, saying I was jealous, that I was trying to ruin her moment. It worked. I was grounded for lying. My letter disappeared from my drawer the next day. By the time I found out she'd enrolled using my documents, my entire future had already been rewritten by her. I still remember standing outside her dorm that fall, my heart breaking as I saw her walking with my old friends, wearing the jacket I'd saved for months to buy, laughing with the boy who once loved me. That was the night I realized she hadn't just stolen my acceptance letter. She had stolen my identity. For years, she lived the life that should have been mine, the city, the friends, the career. And I stayed behind in our small Pennsylvania town, working double shifts at a diner, trying to rebuild something from the ashes she left me. But pain has a strange way of teaching you patience. It doesn't fade, it ferments. It becomes sharper, colder, more deliberate. And by the time 5 years passed, I wasn't the naive girl she'd betrayed anymore. I was someone else. Someone who had learned how to play quiet and strike loud. When Samantha came back home for the first time in years, flaunting her success, her luxury job, her perfect engagement, she didn't recognize what was coming. Because I had spent years planning every detail. Every lie I would expose. Every truth I would twist. And I was going to make her live the very life she built, the one built on deception, manipulation, and betrayal. The difference was, this time, she wouldn't be in control. This time, I'd be the writer. And she'd be trapped inside my story. The return of the perfect lie. Samantha returned to our hometown in June, the air thick with summer heat and nostalgia. The kind of season where everything smells like memory. But for me, her return wasn't a reunion. It was the opening scene of the life she had stolen, playing in reverse. She arrived in a black Mercedes, the kind of car that announced its own presence before she even stepped out. Same effortless hair. Same designer smile. Even Miles, a successful architect from New York, a faint flicker of exhaustion. That was supposed to be mine. Even perfection everyone has cracks, in town adored and I was about to split them wide open. She played the charming prodigal daughter. She came back pretending to her engagement party, pretending to remember. My father was too blind to see the ghost standing beside her, the ghost of the daughter he had abandoned emotionally, the one who once dreamed in blue NYU brochures. When I walked into that party, every eye turned. I wasn't the same girl she left behind. I wasn't fragile anymore. I wore black, sleek, unshakable. The kind of look that makes people whisper but never dare to approach. Samantha greeted me like nothing had ever happened. "You look different," she said, her voice sugared with false warmth. She had no idea I'd spent years building that difference, in silence, in pain, in strategy. You see, while she was busy climbing the ladder she stole, I had been building something else, connections. I had tracked every name, every company she'd used, every lie she told to get her perfect life. I knew more about her than she did about herself. And I had one advantage she could never see coming, I had nothing left to lose. That night, I watched her toast to her perfect life. The laughter, the champagne, the cameras flashing around her. But beneath the surface, the story was beginning to shift. A week later, her fiancé, Ethan, received an anonymous email, a small piece of truth wrapped in subtle poison. Just a single attachment, a scanned copy of my original NYU acceptance letter, with my name, not hers. No words. No threats. Just evidence. I imagined the silence in their apartment when he opened it. The confusion on his face. The question in his voice. The beginning of doubt. The next morning, Samantha called me. Her tone was colder this time. Did you do something? I smiled into the phone, pretending confusion. Do something? About what? Revenge isn't loud. It's the slow unraveling of a lie until it chokes itself. Over the next few weeks, things began to shift around her, subtly, like gravity bending. Her company started investigating her background after a concerned source pointed out discrepancies in her college records. Her fiancé began to cancel dinner plans, started working late. Her perfect smile started to falter around the edges. And every time I passed her on Main Street, she'd force that same smile, but her eyes gave her away. They were searching. Afraid. The life she had built on my name was beginning to crumble, and I hadn't even touched the foundation yet. Because what Samantha didn't know, was that I wasn't just exposing her lies. I was going to recreate them. Force her to live the life she had crafted for me, the one she thought she buried forever. The life of betrayal. Of loss. Of being replaced. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about symmetry. And by the time I was done, she would finally understand what it felt like, to watch your world burn while everyone else applauds the fire. The mirror begins to crack. There's a moment in every revenge story when silence turns into motion, when plans, once whispered in the dark, begin to echo in the real world. For me, that moment arrived the day I stepped into Samantha's world, wearing a version of her own reflection. I had moved to New York 2 months before she came home, quietly, strategically. I took a job at a small interior design firm just a few blocks from the company where she worked as a creative director. My name badge read Amelia Carter, my mother's maiden name, clean, untraceable. No one knew who I really was. But I knew every step she took. Every coffee shop she favored, every client she charmed, every weakness she thought she'd hidden behind charm and charisma. I became her shadow. And slowly, I began to appear where she least expected, not as an enemy, but as someone she might trust. It started with a conference. Her firm partnered with mine on a luxury hotel project. She didn't recognize me at first, my hair shorter, darker, my posture different, my voice calm and measured. I had learned how to erase the girl she destroyed. When she finally looked at me, she smiled politely, like she always did when she wanted to own a room. Have we met before? She asked. For a moment, I wanted to say it, the years of pain, the name she stole, the silence she left me in. But I just smiled back. Maybe in another life. That line haunted her. I could tell. Her eyes narrowed just slightly, her voice flickered with a faint unease. Because deep down, she could feel something, familiarity wrapped in threat. Over the next few weeks, we worked together. Emails, meetings, design pitches. She began to rely on me, on Amelia. And while she opened doors for me, she never realized I was building a mirror behind every one of them. I started leaking whispers, small, deliberate. Rumors that she was losing focus. That she was taking credit for other people's work. Nothing loud enough to destroy her instantly, just enough to make her colleagues start watching. Ethan, her fiancé, was next. Through mutual friends, ones who had no idea who I really was, I found my way into his professional circle. I knew exactly what kind of woman he admired, quiet confidence, calm intelligence, warmth wrapped in mystery. The opposite of the restless ambition Samantha wore like perfume. And just like that, fate, or maybe irony, introduced us at a networking event. Amelia, I said, shaking his hand. He smiled, polite but curious. I've heard about you. Samantha says you're talented. I smiled. She says a lot of things. Over the following weeks, we crossed paths often. Too often. At first, it was professional. Then it wasn't. Ethan began to see through the illusion his fiancée had built. The inconsistencies. The missing truths. He asked questions. She gave answers that didn't match. And the more she tried to fix the cracks, the more visible they became. Meanwhile, I slipped deeper into her life, meeting her clients, earning her boss's trust, being praised for the calm precision she lacked. Her mirror image was outperforming her effortlessly. One night, after a long project meeting, she pulled me aside. Her voice trembled, though she tried to hide it. "You remind me of someone," she said. "It's strange." I looked her straight in the eyes. "Maybe I'm just showing you who you really are." That night, I saw it, the flicker of fear. The recognition, buried deep in her memory, clawing its way back to the surface. She didn't know yet who I was. But she could feel it. The past she buried was beginning to breathe again. And for the first time in years, she looked haunted. But this was just the beginning. Because I wasn't going to expose her publicly, not yet. I was going to make her lose herself first. Piece by piece. Memory by memory. Until she could no longer tell the difference between who she was and who she pretended to be. The unraveling of Samantha Reed. Revenge isn't just about destruction, it's about rhythm. It's about letting your enemy hear the ticking of their own downfall before it strikes. And by now, Samantha could hear it. The confident, polished woman who had once stood on stolen ground was beginning to fracture. The cracks showed in her voice, in the way her hands trembled slightly when she reached for her phone, in the way she glanced over her shoulder in empty rooms as if the past was finally walking toward her. The whispers at her company had grown louder. The anonymous tips continued, small, precise, impossible to trace. One questioned her credentials. Another pointed out a strange gap in her early career. She tried to silence them with charm, but charm doesn't work when fear starts leaking through the edges. And then came the day that changed everything, the day her fiancé discovered the truth. It wasn't the email that broke him. It was the pattern. The way every question he asked led to another missing piece. So he hired a private investigator. And in 1 week, her story unraveled like a thread pulled from an expensive dress. Her degree, faked. Her records, inconsistent. Her references, ghost names and expired addresses. When Ethan confronted her, I wasn't there, but I didn't need to be. I could imagine it perfectly, the disbelief, the anger, the sense of betrayal that mirrored the one I had felt years ago when she destroyed my future. The next morning, she didn't show up to work. By evening, news spread quietly. Samantha Reed had been suspended pending investigation for falsifying documents. The empire she built on my name was collapsing, and yet, I wasn't finished. Because revenge, for me, was never just about taking her down. It was about making her live what she made me feel. So when she called me, desperate, broken, her voice trembling on the other end, I answered. "Amelia. I don't know what's happening. Everything's falling apart." I let silence fill the air for a long moment. Then I said softly, "Maybe it's not falling apart. Maybe it's just showing you the truth." She sobbed, whispering that she didn't understand. And I almost felt pity, almost. But pity dies fast when you remember how it felt to be gaslit, erased, humiliated for telling the truth. "I think," I said finally, "you've just been living someone else's life too long." And then I hung up. Over the next week, her engagement ended quietly. Her company terminated her contract. Her friends, the ones she'd charmed and manipulated, disappeared overnight. The woman who once wore my identity now had none. She moved back to Pennsylvania, back into the same small town she had once looked down on. Back into the same broken house that still held my father's fading photographs. And that's where I followed her. I didn't arrive as Amelia this time. I arrived as myself, the ghost she thought she buried. When she opened the door, she froze. Her face went pale, her breath caught. It was like she was seeing her own reflection, one that time had sharpened, not softened. "Claire," she whispered. My real name. The name she stole. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was heavy, electric, alive. Then I stepped inside, brushing past her. The house smelled like regret, like dust and forgotten dreams. "I thought you were gone," she said quietly, eyes glassy with fear. I turned to her, my voice steady. You thought wrong. She looked smaller now, fragile in a way I never imagined she could be. And in that moment, I realized she wasn't the villain anymore. She was the result of her own lies. I had become the shadow she created. And now, she would live in that shadow, the same one she cast over me all those years ago. But I wasn't done yet. Because the final act of revenge isn't confrontation. It's revelation. And the world was about to learn exactly who Samantha Reed really was. The life she built, the life she lost. The truth always finds its way to daylight, even when buried beneath years of deceit. And when it does, it doesn't whisper. It roars. Samantha's name began spreading across the industry like a secret finally set free. One journalist, a woman I had carefully tipped off, started digging into the inconsistencies in her story. The falsified documents. The stolen identity. The NYU admission that never belonged to her. What began as a quiet whisper on a blog turned into a full-blown investigation. Her name trended online for all the wrong reasons. The internet tore apart the image she'd spent years building. Each article, each comment, each headline, another brick falling from the tower of lies she'd climbed. And there I was, standing in the wreckage of her reputation, watching the life she stole finally return to ashes. But even as she crumbled, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't satisfaction, not the kind I expected. It was silence. A strange, haunting silence that comes after a storm when you realize the thunder you summoned has nowhere else to go. I went to see her one last time. The house was dim, curtains drawn, half-packed boxes scattered like abandoned memories. She was sitting at the kitchen table, eyes empty, hair undone, surrounded by unopened letters. The same table where we once sat as teenagers, pretending to be sisters. When she saw me, her voice cracked. You did this. I didn't deny it. I just nodded. Yes. But you started it. Tears welled in her eyes, the kind that weren't dramatic anymore, just raw. I didn't mean to ruin your life, she whispered. I just wanted one that felt like it mattered. For a moment, my anger faltered. Because beneath the lies, she was exactly what I used to be, a girl desperate to be seen, to be loved, to matter to someone. But the difference was, she chose to destroy someone else to fill her emptiness. And I had chosen to rebuild mine from the pieces she left behind. You could have had your own life, I said softly. But you took mine. So now, you're living the one you created, the one built on lies. How does it feel? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence between us was confession enough. As I walked out of that house, I felt the weight of every year, every scar, every sleepless night I'd carried. And for the first time in a decade, I let it go. Revenge had been my fire. But forgiveness, not for her, but for myself, was the only way to step out of the smoke. In the months that followed, I started over. I launched a small design studio under my real name, Claire Reed. The irony wasn't lost on me. The name she once corrupted was now the one that built something real. Clients came. Opportunities grew. People admired the resilience, the quiet power. No one knew the story behind it, and I didn't need them to. One morning, while walking through Central Park, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was her. Just one sentence. I finally understand what it felt like to be you. I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. Because understanding wasn't redemption. And I had already written my ending. The girl who once lost her life had found something deeper, herself. And Samantha. She was still trapped inside the one she created, a masterpiece of lies, now her only truth.